I was saying that Chuck Schumer had requested this all senators classified briefing on the situation with Iran. And I was wondering if you knew anything about that. And if such a thing were to happen, what are the pieces of information that you need to get?
Well, I don't know about the briefing. As far as I know, it hasn't been scheduled yet. I did request from Chairman Risch, who is the chairman. I'm the ranking member on the Foreign Relations Committee. I urged him to also request a briefing on behalf of the Foreign Relations Committee. I think we need to know what the potential is to take out the Iranian enrichment facilities at Fordow. I also think it's important for us to know what the status is of the servicemen and women who are in the region. My understanding is we have about 40,000 troops in the region. Many of them are within range of Iranian missiles. Also, how many Americans in Israel might be affected by further escalation of this conflict. So I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, and Congress really needs to get the information.
So when you say the briefing on the Fordow plan, do you know whether U.S. munitions are capable of truly eliminating that facility? I mean, I keep hearing again and again that the answer to that is no, that there is uncertainty as to whether that bomb, the mother of all bombs, as they call it, would actually be successful, even in that very specific way, never mind what came after. Do you have confidence on the answer to that question?
I think we've gotten conflicting answers to that, and that's why I think it would be really helpful to have that's information that we need. I certainly hope the president has some definitive information about that before he makes a decision about what he might be willing to do. The fact is, as you all have reported, it's not just that bunker-busting bomb that's involved there. It's the B-2 bomber and the fact that an American pilot would need to pilot that plane. And so that would very directly involve American troops in the conflict. And we need a lot more answers than we've gotten from this administration.
And do you have any sense of what support Iran is getting or would be getting from Russia, from China, from others that would, of course, escalate this into something much closer to World War III than a single strike from one U.S. bomber?
You know, I asked the question. We had a hearing on NATO at the Foreign Relations Committee this morning after the hearing with Secretary Hegseth. And I asked the witnesses about that question, if they were surprised that Russia had not provided weapons to Iran, even though Iran has been requesting them. And both witnesses said, no, in fact, they weren't surprised, that Russia is not a reliable ally, and that they didn't expect that to change. Now, I don't have any information about what China might be doing.
So I know when you mentioned the discussions this morning, you questioned Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth specifically today on whether the Pentagon has provided options for a strike, multiple options for what that would be. And he said to you that any answer would be provided in a classified setting. But you felt it was important that he answer that publicly to the American public.
Well, that's right. I mean, I wasn't expecting him to answer the specifics of any options. Yeah. But what I was expecting him to tell us is whether they were having serious conversations, which I assume they are, but again, he declined to respond to that, about not just what kind of action they might be taking, whether they're contemplating very direct action, and what they're doing to protect service members who are in the region. I'm sure that families watching that hearing who have loved ones stationed in the region are very concerned about what we might be doing, and the American public needs to be told about what the options are, what we're thinking about.
Right. Well, they do, because we could be talking about a big, serious war of many years and a lot of American lives on the line. And we all know that that's the reality of this. And in that context, I want to ask you about your colleague, Senator Ted Cruz on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Ted Cruz is a respected guy in foreign relations, right? He is. We know that. Therefore,
think so.
I just want to play that exchange that he had with Tucker Carlson.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? What's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and
What percent?
predominantly Shia. Okay,
No,
this is
no,
cute.
it's not
Okay.
even. You don't know anything about Iran. So
Okay,
actually,
I
the
am
country.
not the Tucker Carlson
No, but
expert on Iran.
You're a
who
senator
says,
who's calling
okay,
for the
you're the one who
overthrow of the
claims-
government.
You're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country.
Senator, how many people who are for rah, 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 go, go, go in this situation are doing it because they've always felt that way and are doing it in the absence of basic information such as knowing the population of Iran is 92 million people?
Well, I can't speak to how many people know the specifics, but again, that's why I think it's important for the White House to brief us with the Department of Defense, with the Secretary of State, to talk about what all of the potential ramifications are of the United States taking any action. Because Congress is supposed to have the legal authority to authorize this kind of action in a conflict. And if the White House is not willing to share with members of Congress what they're thinking, then that doesn't speak well for what all of the steps are that happen next. Because using a bunker buster bomb isn't the end of that conflict, clearly. There will be ramifications for that, and people need to understand what those are.
Senator Shaheen, thank you so very much. I appreciate your time.